What's up, Willowbrook? Today we're in Revelation chapter 13. In verses 1 through 8, we read about this beast that comes out of the sea with 7 heads, with 10 horns and 10 crowns. Now, the consensus among scholars seems to be that this is talking about a political ruler that we know as the Antichrist. People all around the world worship this beast. They also worship the dragon that gives the beast his power, which we also know is Satan. So we have this political ruler called the Antichrist. Then, moving on into verses 11 through 15, we read about another beast. This beast comes from the earth. It has horns like a lamb. It has a voice like a dragon that we know, again, as Satan. And the consensus seems to be that this beast is a religious leader that we call the false prophet. The job of this beast is to get the whole world to worship the first beast. And as we read our chapter, this beast is succeeding in doing that. And then we read something really interesting, that an image is made of the first beast. This is in 15 through 17. And somehow this image comes alive and can speak. And anyone who doesn't worship the beast or doesn't worship this image will be killed. And then we move into something that seems a little more like modern day when I read this. People are required to receive a mark on their hands or foreheads, and anyone without the mark can't buy or sell anything. So this seems very plausible, right? The idea of needing a way to purchase things or sell things using a mark. Think about how our credit cards or debit cards work with a chip, and then there's a chip reader. Sometimes you can tap to pay. You can use Apple Pay on your phone or your watch, and you can just pretty much put it near a reader and it scans, and you're able to buy something that way. There's also something called Amazon One, where you can use your palm to purchase something. You basically put your palm over the scanner and it scans your palm, and you're able to buy things that way. So as we're thinking about this in a literal sense, this seems very plausible that this could happen today or sometime soon. But I also think there's something else taking place, something spiritual happening in this chapter and with this part of the chapter. And to understand it, I think we need to go back to the Old Testament. I think we need to go back to the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses is talking to Israel. They're about to enter into the promised land, and he's giving them instructions on how they're supposed to live in the land that God's giving them. In chapter 6, verses 4 through 5, we read the beginning of this very famous prayer, one of the most famous prayers in the Bible, called the Shema. And this was a prayer that ancient Israelites prayed in the morning and at night. And this is what it says, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 5. This is just the beginning of this prayer. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength." Then after Moses says this, listen to the following verses. Listen to verses 6 and 8 and see if it sounds familiar to what we're reading in Revelation today. It says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads." Some translations say your hands and between your eyes. So doesn't that sound very familiar to Revelation 13, where people are having to put a mark on their hands or their foreheads? Now, what does this mean? What am I trying to say? Well, our eyes are used to see, and our hands are used to do mostly everything else. So thinking about this prayer in Deuteronomy 6, I think symbolically this means that the words of this prayer, the Shema, were supposed to guide the vision and actions of the people in everyday life, in every moment. This is essentially about allegiance to God. So when we look at Revelation 13, we see people that are pledging allegiance not to God, but to the beast. This is sort of like an anti-Shema. And I think that this takes me back to verse 10, where it says, I think the thrust of really this whole chapter is this, that this is a call for patient endurance and faithfulness from God's people. We're called to endure persecution. We're called to pledge our allegiance to God, no matter what happens. So no matter what comes our way, today, if we find ourselves literally living in Revelation chapter 13 or just normal trials and tribulations of life, my hope for you, my hope for myself is that our allegiance would be to God and God alone. I pray that God blesses you today.